I'm blown away that my note back was coherent too. So,
It was so kind. It was totally, there's not a typo.
and
You
that's not a
signed it.
form letter, or no,
No.
it's real.
Hey everyone, welcome to Third Concept, a podcast about creativity, personal transformation, and different stories about navigating through life. My guest today is the multi-talented Anne Leighton. Anne believes artists can develop their careers by creating their own opportunities and has developed her career in this way. Her publicity and music services roster include Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. I don't know if you've heard of them. Joe Denenzone and Stratusfurious, Michael Veach, and songwriters from the PBS program We Remember Songs of Survivors, John Hall and Orleans, Dean Friedman, Sharon Katz and the Peace Train, Hank Wadle, Robin Lane, Roby One, Tom Surzak, Robin Bateau, and the Indie Collaborative. She's written 4 books you can get on her website, AnneLeighton.com, which is ANNELEIGHTON.com. The most notable is her poetry collection, The Leighton Explosion. Sales from that book helped her find a songwriter deal with Sheer Music Publishing South Africa, which bought out her alter ego, hip-hopper Bronx Buffalo. In addition to performing her own spoken word, she's delivered a number of guest lectures and keynote speeches on motivational rock and roll. Together, Anne and Bronx are working to make the world a better place. Welcome, Anne, and thank you for joining me today.
Lisa, it's a pleasure, and thank you.
So, a weird little backstory on how I first connected with Anne. It was August 16th, 1990. I have it right here.
Oh my gosh.
Nicely pressed.
Oh, I typed it too.
So, when I was young, I wanted to be a writer. I was a huge fan of Cheap Trick. I was trying to figure out how to get published. Back in the 90s, it was all hair bands all day, and it frustrated the hell out of me. I was like, yeah, these bands are talented and everything, but Cheap Trick is like amazing. They were having this revival at the time. And so, yeah, I sent out a few query letters, and I got my very first rejection letter 25 years ago, almost to the day. And I will never forget when that envelope came in the mail from Hit Parader, which, if you were around at that time, was like a huge friggin' magazine. And I saw the envelope and I was like, there's no way they accepted me, but you never know. And I opened it up and it was 1 paragraph. So I was like, all right, this is not good. But it was so like validating. I'll read it. It says, "Thank you for your Cheap Trick submission. Unfortunately, the article doesn't meet our editorial needs. We're interested in articles with some of the younger names in heavy metal, such as Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, and Bon Jovi. And we're interested in story pieces with an angle or Q&A. Best of luck in placing the piece. It does show a lot of knowledge on a great band who has influenced all the people we write about." And I was like,
Wow.
holy shit. This, first off, she saw through my bullshit trying to get stuff published about Cheap Trick when she's telling me, you know what we publish. Like, we don't care about them. That's not what our readership wants. And, also, I was a child, so I was not interviewing them. I was like sharing some, I think it was like 10 trivia facts about Cheap Trick because I had like this encyclopedic knowledge about them. But then there was like a compliment at the end that was so like validating to me as a writer. I had no idea. I was like, does this person know I'm a child? And she
No, I probably, but maybe I did. Who knows? I can't even believe that letter was so coherent from me. Just kidding. I love Cheap Trick. This is a true confession. I'd seen them when I first came to Buffalo and I was impressed. And they had also been one of my favorite late great rock stars, Rick Derringer. They had worked on Guitars and Women and some of the best rock songs. And nowadays I'm friends with a guy that I used to read articles about Cheap Trick, Kerry Baker. I bet that name rings a bell to you.
No, I guess my
Oh my
encyclopedic
gosh.
knowledge is
Well, Kerry was from Chicago and he loved Cheap Trick. And through his college days, he wrote articles, and then he became a massive music publicist with major labels like IRS Records. And then he went out on his own, and he became the go-to guy for Americana at rock and roll. And he's worked with people like Delbert McClinton and other names that I'm drawing a blank, as well as some favorite rock and roll friends or friends from rock history like the Cowsills, who are one of my current favorite bands. So, and there probably are articles online that Carrie has written. Carrie recently retired from music publicity and is going back to writing. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday he writes a book about Cheap Trick.
I'm sure I've read his articles.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
I wasn't looking at the bylines. I was
Yeah.
back those days. So, your Hipperator days were not the beginning of your career. It was close to the beginning, but let's kind of like go a little bit a few years before that. So basically, from my childhood to yours, tell me how like your early career started. Where were you born, and how did you end up in New York?
I was born in Queens, and it wasn't very hard for me to end up in New York because my family lived just outside the city in towns including Dobbs Ferry, Yonkers, and Larchmont, Mamaroneck, New York. I went to college as far away from Larchmont as I could. I went to Fredonia, which is up near Buffalo. That was the smartest decision I ever made because I feel I grew up in Fredonia. And I got a job in Buffalo radio right away because I was working my way through college doing commercial radio, and I worked at a country station, which was life-changing as well. And that music has stuck with me forever, as has every type of music from every place I've ever worked. The station that I worked at in Buffalo had a super eclectic format, from Cheap Trick all the way to folk music, and we even played Ozzy Osbourne, who came into the station, and that was really cool. And then I moved downstate. We played only rock-driven records, from AC/DC to Dan Fogelberg. AOR was the format, and it was a great station, but it died, and I was so willing to work at the top 40 station, but that it had become, but they didn't want me to continue working there, and that's life.
So what were kind of like your life dreams early on? Like what were you aspiring to do?
I think I was aspiring to have a home recording studio, and just write, as well as do radio and create and write books and do audio production, including writing songs. And that's a lot more work than it really is. Easier said than done. But I've gotten some of my writing ideas done. I still have a lot more to work on. Boy,
Which
oh
is
boy.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, because as a creative, if you run out of ideas,
Yeah.
that's death.
I don't
That would be terrible.
I have too many ideas. So yeah.
Tell me about your early days in New York City, because it seems like, from what you were saying, there was quite a rapid rise from maybe nothingness to somethingness.
Yeah, there really was a nothingness, because after the radio station I worked at WRNW Briarcliff Manor, which was also Westchester, it went under. I lost my job. I worked for 3 years, or 3 or 5 years, 3 years, I think, at a decorative hardware studio. And then 1982 to 1985, yeah. And I was doing some free community radio at a college station, some other places. And radio was not exciting for me as writing, because writing, I felt I could do something different every day. Radio, it had gotten to the point where I was playing the same songs.
Mm.
over and over again. So I decided to, I lost my job, lost the roof over my head. So that's my cat Joe that's rubbing against the microphone. But I lost my radio job, and I ended up going to New York City. I was thinking freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose,
Mm-hmm.
and I would make myself worth something. And
Mm-hmm.
I just basically I knew all the locations for major show business buildings, and I
Mm-hmm.
photocopied my resume. I got an, a phone service which was like $12 a month then, and people could leave messages, and just went to all the show business buildings that I could
Mm-hmm.
think of, and dropped off my resume. One of the showbiz buildings downtown New York City was a radio station, and they hired me to do temporary work as a receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, made calls to some of the magazines that I
Mm-hmm.
liked, and Hit Parader had responded to queries I sent them. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, Andy Sesher, who's the editor of the publication, called me up and said, "Oh, when I was living in Westchester and still working at the hardware studio, I'd send queries to them because I was doing interviews for Buffalo Nightlife,
Mm-hmm.
and I had interviewed Talus, Billy Sheehan's band, before David Lee Roth, and Kicks I had interviewed in a few other bands. So I was periodically sending him queries. So he had responded and said, well, just keep pitching. He was looking for me to get interviews with name artists, like the level of
Mm-hmm.
Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
So Twisted Sister was another one that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to interview. They were my favorite. They just, yeah, they've stuck with me all these years. I ended up meeting with Andy when I was working in New York City, and the timing was perfect because their receptionist editor had gone, and he liked my attitude, and I stayed with them for a long time. And I think one of the big things that they liked was that I responded to the readers. I think
Mm.
it brought energy and integrity to the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Did any magazines write back to you? Because now I send queries to magazines and I don't hear back from them.
Well, nowadays it's a completely different ball game. It's I think it's very nasty. I mean, even like book publishing, as I'm sure you've experienced, it's like even if even if you get a contract, they want you to handle all your own marketing, and there's,
Yeah,
unless you're like super top tier,
yeah.
it's
They don't
like
have, yeah,
nobody cares.
there's no budget, and you do have to figure out how to handle your marketing and try not to have too much on your plate during that time. And it's really hard if you're a working gal or a working guy with a day job, and part of your job is to take care of other people.
Yeah.
So how do you find time to market yourself without losing the roof over your head?
So going from radio to music journalism, how was that transition? That seems like an incredible job interviewing all these people.
Yeah, I
Was it
had
all good, or does it kind of like ruin your your view of the music, like, or was it?
no. I mean, none of this really, nothing's really ruined my view of the music. I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by it all, and the range of music that's out there is amazing. I think I had an easier time making the transition because I've always had access to the artists, and even now to this day, I've just sent notes to friends that have a music history on Facebook, and they're friends. And I'm like, I'd like to interview you. And bit by bit, I'll probably in the next 8 years interview all my famous rock and roll friends on Facebook,
Mhm.
as well as the unknowns. But it's also what is famous anymore, unless
Mhm.
you're a household name, which I probably don't have access to.
Mhm.
Um, I did try for an interview. There's a singer or a songwriter, a wild guy out of South Africa that I love called the Kiftness, and he's on my wish list for
Mhm.
interviews. Um, I like his crazy mind and how
Hmm.
creative he is.
When you go to interview someone, do you have a certain process that you follow all the time, or does it change? Obviously, there's going to be nuance between people, but like, how do you approach that whole
I
process?
definitely try to learn as much as I can. It's easier now because
Hmm.
I can just sit at my computer and listen to interviews, Google stories, scroll their social media,
Hmm.
and that's basically what I do. And then I start rolling with the questions and feeling where I'm going. And what I'll do is I'll first write a letter to them. Once I've done a certain amount of research and look for photos and things like that, I'll write a letter to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking forward to doing the interview, and we'll be talking about this, that, and the other thing. And also, I'm looking for themes when I do the interview that are related to inclusiveness, because that's what my podcast. It's called the Ann Leighton Inclusion Interview Show,
Hmm.
and I just came up with that name because my poetry book was the Ann Leighton Explosion to Inclusion. I just wanted to. I like the rhythm of
Hmm.
both words, and so that's how I came up with the name of the show. And I didn't want to call it a podcast. Everybody calls things podcast,
Hmm.
and I just use interview show
Hmm.
as to make it flow for me.
So back in the day, before there was the internet, how did you do research back then?
I I have a lot of rock encyclopedias. We would get bios from the record
Hmm.
companies. We would get music. There was also a certain amount of knowledge that I had of the artists that I was reaching out, or in the scene that they were involved in, based on other interviews that I'd done with other artists. And then also having a conversation. An interview is or can be a conversation on a theme or a couple of themes.
Hmm.
And also the realization is I'm only getting 20 minutes, so I may only be getting 4 or 5
Mm.
questions.
Do you prefer the old days where it was kind of, maybe a little bit now I do feel like we can be as hyper prepared as we want unless someone has
Right.
no digital footprint, but I'm sure most of the people that you interview
Yeah.
have pretty
Yeah. But
extensive.
I think everybody is trying to promote themselves. So
Yeah.
I'm actually, there's an artist that I might be starting work with from Buffalo, where I'm from,
Mhm.
that doesn't have much of a digital footprint.
Mhm.
And I'm like, dude, you need a website. Dude, you need
Yeah.
this. Dude. So it's like, well, if you want me to work with you, we're going to have to do a homework assignment every week for you to
Mhm.
do X, Y, but not Z. Z you'll do next week. That type of
Mhm.
thing. But
But
at
is
this,
it
yeah.
I was just going to say, do you like the spontaneity of the old days where maybe it wasn't as um prepared?
Yeah. Well, it's always for me. It's always been prepared. Now I have a friend, one of my songwriters, Dan Bergren, who is also my radio teacher in Fredonia.
Mhm.
He loves to tell the story of when he was in the army, and there was this new group called ELP, Emerson, Lake
Mhm.
and Palmer, coming out, and Greg Lake was coming in to do an interview, and he had no info on Greg. He did a spontaneous interview and learned about Greg Lake on site. So he always loves to tell that story about how to use listening, what the artist is saying, understanding the artist's struggle, because all
Mm.
artists want more than they get, and also
Mhm.
understand the artist's process. And I'm breaking
Mhm.
down a, a short sentence that Dan gave us. I'm breaking down every element of what you're doing. Do I have a preference? I think I really love the fact that we have so much online nowadays.
Mm.
But the preference that I have the most, whether it's having a ton of information at my disposal or having no information, I love the process of just listening and
Mm.
connecting and learning
Mm.
about that individual person. I'm I'm researching right now the right person to interview so that I can get insight on all the problems that are the LGBTQ community is facing. And and that came about from me going, I don't understand these pronouns, all the way to, okay, I want to know more. So it's like, and that's, the pronouns are the least of the problems that the community is now facing because of
Right.
what's going on with
Yeah.
everything.
Everything. What you said about the listening and connection is totally resonates with me because I'm a very high anxiety person.
Me
And
too.
so like when I get a creative project, my first reaction every single time is fuck. Like it's just
Yes, yes. How am I going
Shit.
to do this?
how am I gonna do this? It doesn't matter how simple, it's immediate panic.
How am I going to get it done? Yes, I'm totally
Yeah.
with you, dude.
That's why whenever I hire people, I always look for people who are panicking because I know those are the ones that will do a good job because they care and they understand that
Yeah,
you have a directive and then there's a million ways you can go with it and you have to now be like the wizard behind the curtain, and the answer to that every single time is I got to get in the fucking zone and I have
Yes.
to connect with what's true. And when you do it, it's bliss. Like that's why we do it. It's that place.
Yes.
And so it doesn't matter if you're prepared. It doesn't matter if you have a ton of information. If you can actually connect with that, like God stuff or universe or whatever, that's the key. And I think it's the key also to kind of like life. Like when you're like, what am I doing with my life? What what is this? What are we going through as a country? What are we going through as a world? You know, like it's
yes.
when you can remember your job is to connect, it's quite simple.
Yes, yes.
But all we do is forget all day, every day. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is focus. It's getting in the zone of it. And I think the fact that you're like, how am I going to get this done? That's part of the
Process.
imposter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Dude, at that. And I have Joe Denham's own has a song, Imposter, and his line is something to the effect of, it's the people that don't have the imposter syndrome that are the problems.
Yes.
Now,
I hear
you
that
don't
all the
always,
time,
you don't always have to go through the imposter syndrome, but there are times where it's like, I got this pile, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? So, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think at some point in your life you may get past it, but you at least have to go through an imposter period.
Yeah.
Like 20s and 30s, I think.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. There is every week I have assignments that I'm going to do, and those assignments really take a whole month to do because it's that thorough work. So
Which is fine because time is made up anyway.
Yeah. That's very good. That's very true.
I like the phrase that you use where you say you were always on the right track even if it's wrong. So tell me a little bit about that type of mindset that you've had.
Sometimes we make decisions that get us away from our goals, or I worked at radio in Buffalo, and I was at a main station, and I chose to move downstate, which is a more competitive market, but I chose to move downstate because I wanted to be closer to the city. I felt that I could hang out with people. I've worked with some people or I've left situations that probably hurt my whole flow of where I was going with my life, but there were aspects of some of the situations, like when I left Hip Parader, I was not a fan of the artists that we were starting to cover in the magazine. I didn't relate to those artists. And so I left there, but I ended up becoming a publicist, even though I went through about a year and a half of doing office temp work.
Mm-hmm.
That was the right thing for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, those are examples. Sometimes you just have to go with what hurts to get into what helps you, even if you go through hard times.
Tell me a little bit about some of your most memorable moments of your career. It's from when we were talking, it seems like you were pretty close with Ian Anderson, particularly. Like,
I still
on a.
feel connected with him. I did North American Tour Press from 1995-ish through about 2019, and then we
Hmm.
did one more show tour, like 2023.
Hmm.
And I have a feeling he's not going to come back for a while.
Hmm.
If he comes back, I can see the dates just trimming down a little bit in Europe as well.
Hmm.
But that's okay because he's really fallen in love with his kids. He's more into the writing mode. And also
Hmm.
the realities of touring nowadays when you're a classic rock artist and you're in your 70s in North America. It's not, the audiences have changed. American audiences, ha ha ha, have changed. But we have stayed close. Every now and then I'll see some photos online of trees that
Hmm.
are amazing, and I'll send it to him. Or I work with a band called the Slambovian Circus of Dreams, who are
Hmm.
so much fun. And I work with a lot of Hudson Valley indie folk singer songwriters, and they had this song. The Slambovians have a song, "Solve It All Daily" or
Hmm.
"Solve It All Dolly,"
Hmm.
which you got it. Yep. But there was something about that song that was very Tull like. And I
Hmm.
finally said, I'm just going to send this to Ian, see what he
Hmm.
says about the song. The band's working on a tour book. They've worked with people like Dara Williams
Hmm.
and a bunch of other great ones in the folk scene. Garth, the late Garth Hudson was a fan of theirs from the band. And so I sent Ian a note about this song, and he offered a quote for the song,
Hmm.
which just thrilled the band to no end. But and I pick and choose what I'm going to send him, and that's life. Also, in 2021, I had endometrial cancer. I also had blood clots, which Ian had survived, has
Hmm.
been surviving through all these years. So I wrote to him about it, and I next note I day I got a note from Ian's wife, Shona, sending me love. So it is one of the things that I've learned from him is just leadership, where you're encouraging people to be the best that they can. If they're going through a rough time, egg them on, send a friend, be a friend,
Hmm.
that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Did you have a lot of closer relationships with these artists from like work or social? Like I'm just trying to like I guess maybe live vicariously through you, but
I think it's a cordial relationship. I've never gone to Ian's place in I've never gone to the UK, so I've never visited him.
mm-hmm.
Uh, but on the other hand, I've had other artists like Joe Dennisstone. He'll do a barbecue or a birthday party,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on where he is celebrating, I'll go. It's hard to travel for me to New Jersey. I don't drive, so sometimes finding a ride is difficult. But New York City, that's always a possibility to hang out with him.
On the not driving topic,
Yeah.
I'm going to segue into because I have to ask you about your experiences with agoraphobia because again, this is another very niche thing we have in common because I
Mm.
suffered from that in my mostly in my 20s, a little bit in my 30s, and then in my 40s finally
Yeah.
basically kicked it. But
How?
it's Therapy, actually.
Yeah.
I had been avoiding anything that was triggering because I felt so terrible whenever I would have a panic attack or anything would happen. And I thought, okay, well, the farther I stay away from anything that upsets me, the safer I'll be, the happier I'll be. And that
True.
actually, exposure therapy was key. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't even take that much
Wow.
to, it's just, it's the feeling of the panic rising and then allowing yourself to sit with it and just be like,
Yeah.
okay, here it is. And there's actually, I forget the name of the book. It's a ridiculous book. Like when you read it, you're like, this is written so in such a silly voice. There's a couple, and there's an older one. It's called it's by Claire Weeks. It's Weekes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think it's called Hope and Help for Your Nerves. That one's pretty popular. That's more like from like maybe the 1960s or 70s. So it's kind of written in that like kind of
Mm-hmm.
folksy tone.
My language.
But it's very comforting. The other guy, the newer book I can send you, but he's kind of like, he sort of makes a joke out of it, like not in a
Oh.
belittling way, but he's just sort of like, so what? You're panicked. Who cares? Whatever. You're here. You're experiencing it. Like it's sort of like making a mockery of your own, because when you
I
become
believe
panicked,
him. Yeah, I totally believe in making mockery, laughing
yeah.
at. I totally believe, and that is something that helps. Years ago, I got shingles about 2014,
Mm-hmm.
2013. I got shingles, and during that time, I decided to start finding the humor in
Mm-hmm.
my situation. For the shingles, I really didn't find anything funny,
Mm.
but
But
that my mood was lifted,
mm.
and that's so important. The agoraphobia. So I do go out. I do cross the street.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller streets are easier for me. Bigger streets are really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't get the panic attacks that much, but I do get nervous. There is something, a distance thing that I have to investigate, and I have to do that with a certain type of neurologist.
Wait, I mean, what do you mean by a distance thing?
I have spatial issues where
Oh,
I'm.
yeah, me too. Where you can't tell if something's close or far, kind of thing.
That's kind of it. Like it's, I can't. I'm struggling when I see something that's far off, or if I'm walking, let's say, at a higher level at the movies, and I've just had a bunch of popcorn, so my sugar is high,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm walking at a higher level. Will I fall over the railing?
Mm.
So those were some of the things that I'd been dealing with. Diet is definitely helpful. Working, exercising, all that stuff. Those things are all important. How you treat yourself, loving yourself. And it's also choosing to hang out with really good people as opposed to,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's something you should maybe look. Have you ever heard of derealization or depersonalization?
I'm writing this down. No, I haven't.
We're getting into like
Hey,
way too much nitty gritty, but that's specifically what I suffered from, something called depersonalization, where you don't feel real. You feel like you're in a dream. It's horrible. And there's also something called, oh shit, I forget what it's called, but it's something like Alice in Wonderland syndrome or something, and it also has to do with this like inability to kind of understand how large or small you are and think like it's something about like how like in Alice in Wonderland there's
yeah, I
like the
have
big
a
things and the little
spatial
things.
thing.
Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, no, I should fit there. Boom. And meanwhile, it's a piece of humor, me trying to squeeze in with two people. I have a friend that deals with derealization or depersonalization.
Okay.
He feels like his whole life is the Truman Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I don't have that. I definitely have spatial.
Okay.
But I also used to have a tendency of just letting things escalate as opposed to saying, oh, yeah, okay, ha ha ha, I'm going to laugh at this.
It's really difficult to be calm in such a chaotic inner world.
Yeah.
And the thing is that other people don't understand. Like, you can't talk to the average person and be like, here's what I'm experiencing. They look at you like, I went to doctors and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, and they look at me like, I don't either. Like, I don't know what's wrong with you. But then when I realized what was going on, and for me it was hereditary, so my father understood, and his mother had the
Family.
same thing. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm not nuts. Like, this is
Yeah.
stuff that people, and I feel like the shame that's associated
Oh.
with this makes it 1,000 times worse.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. 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 I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first got my first major agoraphobic attack, I was aiming to cross Bedford Park Boulevard. No, I was aiming to cross Jerome Avenue at Bedford Park Boulevard with Lehman College. I used to always walk to Lehman, then I stopped after that incident and was crossing the street, Jerome Avenue, which was at least a 4-lane highway, and I just couldn't. And that moment was when I just started crying, and a woman helped me cross the street. And I was so ashamed of myself for asking for help. Yeah.
And so how old were you at that time?
I was about 40. No, I was
Oh, that's interesting. 'Cause
45 ish.
Usually the onset is teens, 20s.
There were like many incidents where I was afraid as a 16 and a 12-year-old. There were a couple of things, but nothing major. But I used to walk from Battery Park all the way to Grand Central Station or higher in New York City, and just not think anything of it. Nowadays, when I'm in that area, I feel frozen with all the glass buildings and the tall buildings and buildings I don't even recognize. And that's come on, since 2001,
Yeah.
we've seen the city change.
Yeah.
Its whole architecture. A lot of its architecture.
So do you think something like, was that a high stress period of time in your life, or was it like totally random that this kind of surfaced?
It was random, and it was incubating since my
Oh.
teenage years, and because of everything I'd been through, uh, segueing from Westchester to the Big Apple and all that stuff, it took a back seat. It wasn't prioritized. It didn't happen until after a bad rainstorm on the Lehman campus, and the rainstorm had thunder and lightning, and I went inside for help, and I got kicked out of the building because they were closing it down, and that's where it happened. And to a certain degree, I allowed it to happen. I didn't fight back, but it definitely was stewing, and we got through a lot of in therapy. We got through a lot of dealing with the anxiety and the panic attacks, and then one day something happened where, and this is in the past few years, where I realized it was spatial. The whole time it's been spatial. And the panic attacks came because I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's a lot of self-care, which I'm sure you do a ton of self-care every day.
Not too much, but
You'll do
I'm
more.
I'm told I should be doing more. But I've come to the conclusion that 99% of everything, our problems, our desires, our dislikes, our challenges, it's all brain-based stuff. Like, and just like chemical things. Like, it's not things we can even necessarily control, because we don't know that this doodad is squirting into this doodad. Like dopamine now apparently is taking over all of our lives and controlling us. Like, what we do. Like, sometimes I have to stop and be like, do I want to do this, or is it like my brain just is telling me to do it out of habit?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I mean, now, because they have this word. I mean, I'm one that deals with dieting a lot and eating 95 percent of what I'm doing is eating the right foods.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, oh, but you have cortisol or something like that. And I'm
Mm.
like, well, and then that's from stress. And it's like, is that from my brain or is that from the foods I eat?
Mm.
So what your point about the brain, it could be true with a combination of the
Yeah.
rest of our physiology.
So let's talk a little bit about, you've done lots of different types of writing. So we've talked a little bit about journalism. Tell me more about like what you're doing now and more in the fiction based territory.
Fiction, more so poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have some scripts and plays that written that I mean to sort through and get them
Mm-hmm.
out there. I'm doing a poetry workshop at the Poe Cottage in the
Mm-hmm.
Bronx, and we're just confirming a date for October 6th. This is the third time we're doing the kindness session,
Mm-hmm.
which is where people read poems by some of the masters. We always include a Edgar Allan Poe poem.
Mm-hmm. One of my
Uh,
favorites.
yeah, yeah. So we always include one of his poems that deal with kindness, and then we reach out to other folks. Last time we had um, we had a poem about a man that was shot that was selling cigarettes, but he had a job working with young people, and the
Mm-hmm.
cops decided to shoot him. So we had that. We had a poem, Maya Angelou, one
Mm-hmm.
of her poems, and one of Amanda Gorman's poems, and some other
Mm-hmm.
folks. So there are, oh, and we always use, there's a Naomi Shute poem called Kindness that we always bring to every workshop. So I'm always looking for interesting poems about
Mm-hmm.
kindness and changing the curriculum, changing the reading a little bit. And I'm looking to find a corporate sponsor for that and writing letters to a couple of different websites and organizations like Kindness
Mm-hmm.
uh, that are branded for kindness to see what they
Mm-hmm.
can offer.
So it seems like kindness is a big theme for you.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% kind, so
Well, I was gonna say it it seems two pronged in that it's the awareness of the importance of kindness to others, but it seems like you're also it seems like it was a process for you to realize, oh, I also have to be kind to myself because I
yeah,
don't know that you always were. So
no,
are these, because to me those are two different concepts. In my, I don't think they are, but to
right,
me, I have to remember the self kindness and then go through that whole process of like, oh, is it okay to be kind? You know, like it's so much more complicated than being kind to other
yeah,
people. Even though, like you said, sometimes I'm not kind, sometimes it's hard to be kind, sometimes it's complicated. Am I being mean to myself if I'm kind to that? You know, like all this
yeah,
stuff. So,
yeah.
how do you view that whole like self versus other people and kindness
Well,
theme?
I'm viewing it better than I used to. I will say
Mm-hmm.
that, but I think also working when someone points out to me that I'm being unkind to somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the things that I'm going through, where I'm researching an aspect of in in a community that I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend said, "Oh, shame on you, blah blah blah." I'm paraphrasing her words, but we talked about shame others. That I have to go into myself and learn more.
Wait, why shame on you? For
Well,
not knowing?
yeah, for not knowing, or that I said, "Oh, I joke about these people," or something like that, and I had to examine my prejudices about what I said um,
See,
about some people.
I I actually I don't know. Personally, I really love a redemption arc. And so
Me too.
this is one issue that I have with liberalism is you need to love everybody all the time except for the people that we say you shouldn't,
Oh
and it's
yeah, I
like,
have an issue with that.
yeah, and I think that, like, if you say something that's a little bit off color, and I say to you, "Hey, wait a second, here's actually another perspective," and you go, "Oh my God, I never thought about it like that." That's like the most beautiful thing, and like kind of the whole point of life is to be more aware.
Oh, that's so
So
good.
I
Yeah.
don't. I think that it, having new insights and developing naturally on your own to say, "Oh yeah, I never thought about it like that." That's not shame. That's amazing
Yeah, but I
that you're
think,
receptive.
yeah, I wanted to develop an understanding. I love the idea of making jokes, and
Me
I
too.
I'm
Yeah, I know.
completely politically incorrect. I
Me
always
too.
have been.
Me too.
I do consider myself a super diehard liberal when it comes to helping the underdog and things like that. But how how many people are really underdogs that are, hey, I'm claiming to be whatever when I'm having a roof over my head, I have this, I have that, and I will say something to a stranger that doesn't understand me, that they totally misunderstood me, and I'll get angry at that stranger for not understanding me.
Yeah.
But that this stranger that the person said something to me about
Mm-hmm.
is thinking, well, let me investigate that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me use that as a lesson because I'm all about inclusion and kindness and equality and all that stuff. Let me see if this is an issue and let me look at the broader picture. I will say that as a bisexual and often celibate woman,
Mm-hmm.
that is where I fit. But um, so it's like, why don't I know about this aspect of the community? Why don't and the aspect is pronouns. Why don't I know about
Mm-hmm.
that? And because I looked at pronouns as, come on, let's be serious. A
Mm-hmm.
complete stranger is going to get upset at me because I don't know if she she looks like
Mm-hmm.
a she, but I called her a she, and all of a
Right.
sudden she's scolding me for calling her a she
Yeah.
or calling him a she. Where I'm sorry.
Well, it's one of these things where I feel like the intention was to create inclusion, and I love that, but at the same time, it's become an instrument of division because if you
Yeah,
add pronouns in your signature, you're liberal, and if you refuse to talk about pronouns, you're conservative.
but I
So
don't
it's
know about pronouns.
I know. That's why it's like, do you sign up for it immediately because you have to sign up because you have to stake your claim on which side you're on? So it's like I feel like everything is becoming. That's why I keep saying that each side should just start co-opting the symbols of the other. Like liberals should start flying flags on their hybrids, and just everybody needs to be confused so we don't actually, everybody's so obvious with the brands they choose and the clothes they wear and the music they listen to. Oh, I know you're this or you're that.
Right.
And I'd rather be surprised. I don't want, we don't have to put stickers up to announce who we voted
Yeah, and
for.
I don't want to put anybody down for not knowing anything.
I also want to ask you another really important topic. Cats were listed as one of the things you're dying to talk about. So let's talk about them.
I think people should spay and neuter. I think they are wonderful animals. I think cats do tend to love you. I am going to be speaking. I just received instructions today about a workshop that I'm speaking at around Thanksgiving weekend about cats and music, and I'm actually going to be talking to Ian
Oh.
Anderson about
Mm-hmm.
um, animal rescue and cats
Mm-hmm.
and supporting rescue groups. And I'll be talking with Annie Haslam from Renaissance about it, and hopefully Don Brewer and his wonderful wife Sunny Quinn, who Don used to be a client of mine, and I want to reach out to him and see if we can include those three artists. And the theme of the speech is classic rock and rollers that have rescued and support cat rescue.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
So you already also have a book about cats,
I do.
which I love the title, Pause for Thought, How to Understand What Your Cat is Thinking. And I love the section of like the book description that said, because it talks about what the book covers. Determining when so-called pet psychics are frauds and why you don't even have to rely on spending thousands of dollars to have some self-proclaimed psychic tell you how to have a one-on-one relationship with your cat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I still maintain that. Now, there probably are some pet psychics, because I heard an interview with some pet psychic, or it was a regular psychic. It was a Long Island medium, and she seemed to have some talent for communicating with the dead. Who knows? I have seen cat ghosts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I have met cats that have had qualities of previous cats that owner has had, and I'm not going to question that. I accept that, and I let the owner feel it, because there is a certain presence, because cats are rumored to have 9 lives. I don't know how that story started, but I accept it.
But I would love if you could share a couple of tips on understanding cats, what they're thinking, like some, because there's always like the tail is wagging, that's a bad sign, that's a good sign,
bad sign,
you know.
right.
Okay, that's what I thought too. But I've heard,
especially
like,
the tail thumps. But then again, I have a cat whose tail waves slowly, and she's radiating love and gentleness. I think the first thing that helps is seeing where their head is focused. If their head is looking like it's looking past you, maybe it's looking at the counter, where it wants to jump onto. Okay. I wager that if the cat's legs are starting to change its position in a pouncy way, that cat might be planning to jump on the counter. That's one thing. Another thing is sometimes the cat's energy while you're petting it, the cat will start thumping its tail, and the ears might get a little flatter, not completely flat. It's hinting to you, and the eyes might get a little darker, the pupils getting wider or thicker, more dilated. You want to pull back from petting the cat. Cats have bipolar natures. They suddenly will scratch or bite or something like that.
that's what I was going to ask you too. Like, what about like that thing they do where you're rubbing their belly and they seem totally fine, and you're like, wow, I can't believe they're fine with this, and then all of a sudden attack you.
Yeah,
like, why do they do that?
There is a bipolar quality. They have larger. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which, for most people that don't have bipolar issues or are not loose cannons, is smaller. But cats' amygdalas take over the brain.
Really?
Yeah, it's longer, and there are some online charts of the different brain parts for humans and the different brain parts for cats, and the amygdala, they'll have arrows in describing which part of the brain is which. The cat's head, okay, so our skull is like this, it's rounder on top. The cat's skull is more flattish, kind of like a Tesla truck, but smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how the cat's brains are, and so the head is squeezed. And there's even parts of the brain. There's even a part of the brain that's in the cat's neck, not in the head. Head part.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And it's a part that I don't remember the name, but it's a part that allows them to smell some things.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
The thing with cats that attracted me is how they're regarded on throughout the world, and they're regarded all over the world as both gods and devils.
That's true. So you're saying even in modern times, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
about Egypt, where so there are still
every
places
every every part of the world, and also even Australia, there are cats are not a native species.
Mm-hmm.
It took like the 1600s and Captain Cook, Cook,
Yeah.
not Hook, bringing them there and having
not
them
know that.
multiply. Yeah, cats are hated and loved in Australia.
Interesting.
It really hated for the feral cats are hated. Australia has some laws where you can kill the cats.
Oh, wow.
The feral cats, yeah.
So I often close with these three. I have four questions here, actually. Okay, so the first question is, what's something you do a lot of when you're in a good place in life?
Going outside more, feeding the birds more, exercising. I would say that, but I exercise even when I'm unhappy too.
Okay, so would you rather be peaceful and bored or inspired and restless?
I am inspired and restless and peaceful, but I'm not bored. So I probably would rather be inspired and restless.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the most moving piece of art you've ever seen, heard, or experienced?
Ooh. I think listening to Phil Oakes's voice, and that's the first thing that's coming to my mind. Some of his songs have really done it to me, and I'm gonna go right now. We're the cops of the world, which is what the song says, and it's the lyrics are funny and visual, and we're horny. There's a line about being, horny, and how you can lick our boots and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go with, and there's a lot of songs, but that's the first thing that came to my mind. Phil Oakes is "We're the Cops of the World."
Is there anything you want to like plug here or talk about?
My website is annleighton.com, Leighton.com, and my first name is Ann with an A, and that should have info about my artists, and it'll have a link to my writing pages, like working gal rock and roll poet .blogspot.com, and more things.
I thought this was really fun.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying. I really enjoyed this. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna invite you on to my place.
Okay. That could be fun.
Yeah, we'll talk about
but
the business world.
Yeah, yay.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
I'm